Good evening, and welcome to Boring History for Sleep. Tonight, we step into a world of stone walls, drafty corridors, and echoing silences. A world not of peasants and toil in the fields, but of nobility. Of those who were born to privilege. And yet, who lived lives that were often deeply isolating, rigidly structured, and surprisingly dull. The title might conjure up vivid images of grand feasts and velvet gowns, of roaring hearths and powerful lords issuing commands from atop their towers. But what lay beneath that image was far less glorious, and far more repetitive. Imagine yourself not as a lowly servant, but as a noblewoman or nobleman, born into status, yes, but bound to the rhythms of castle life, trapped not by poverty, but by protocol, not by labor, but by expectation. In the stone heart of medieval Europe, a castle was more than a fortress. It was a home, a prison, a stage, and above all, a place of waiting. Waiting for news, waiting for marriage, waiting for war, waiting for the seasons to turn. So now, settle in. Allow the gentle hum of ancient time to lull your thoughts. As the candlelight of history flickers softly on these stone walls, we begin our journey into the quiet, lonely lives of the noble class. The sun rises slowly over the cold stone of the keep, casting a muted golden light through narrow, glassless windows. The castle walls do not wake with sudden noise or joy, but with a creaking heaviness. A servant's footsteps on timber stairs, the soft rustle of rushes being swept. Imagine yourself lying in a thick but scratchy woolen bed, beneath layers of linen and fur, the air around you still chilled from the night. There is no central heat, no comfort of modern warmth. Only the slow, grudging warmth of breath and blankets. You rise not by alarm or impulse, but by rhythm, the rhythm of the castle's day. Your attendants arrive, always early, always quiet. A basin of cold water is placed on a table. A cloth is folded neatly. You do not bathe, not fully. That happens rarely. Today, you simply wash your face and hands in the frigid water, dabbing at skin that stings slightly from the chill. Your clothing is not chosen by whim. It is assigned, a mark of your status, your role, your place in the family. A stiff collar, laced sleeves, layers of fabric, each telling others that you are someone important, someone bound. Breakfast is not a joyful meal. It is quiet, often solitary. Perhaps some bread, a little ale or watered wine, a spoonful of porridge, if you are lucky, some dried fruit. The great hall remains dim, lit only by what the sky allows. No flickering chandeliers, no bustle of conversation, just the muffled clatter of wooden utensils and the occasional soft cough. From here, the day unfolds with the weight of expectation. For the noble woman, embroidery, not as a pastime, but as a symbol of refinement. You must stitch not only thread, but your image into the fabric of the household. Quiet, precise, composed. For the nobleman, letters, management, reading, if you are educated. Decisions about livestock, land, or taxes may be brought to you, though the steward likely handles the details. Still, you must pretend to lead, appear concerned, appear wise. And yet the hours pass slowly. You pace the gallery once again, the same footsteps along the same worn floorboards. You glance out at the courtyard below, watching servants carry buckets or split firewood. Their lives are hard, brutally so, but not still, not like yours. The walls begin to feel close, the same tapestries, the same stone, the same pale sunlight through the same slit windows. A distant bell marks a canonical hour, time segmented by prayer, not choice. You might join the priest for a brief visit to the chapel. Your piety must be seen, even if your thoughts wander. The incense, thick with resin and quiet sanctity, clings to your clothing. Another layer upon you. You speak only when spoken to. You smile only when appropriate. Your emotions, even joy or curiosity, are not for sharing, but for suppressing. Outside, the world turns green, then brown, then white with frost. Seasons come and go, but the rhythm remains. A noble morning, always the same. Always restrained, always waiting. The noon sun filters through the high windows, casting long stripes of light across the great hall. It is warmer now, but the air remains still, thick with the quiet scent of old timber and damp stone. In the corners, spiders spin, undisturbed. The castle, though vast, feels small. It is during this slow midday that the question of marriage begins to rise, not as romance, not as joy, but as obligation. Your life, from childhood, has been shaped by the alliances of your family. You are not free to choose whom you love. You are expected to marry someone useful. You might be 13. You might be 23. It doesn't matter. Suitors are selected like parcels of land, weighed for their titles, their holdings, their bloodlines. A lord from 2 counties away. A cousin of a duke. Someone your father believes can extend his reach. There is no courtship as you'd imagine it. There are letters, carefully scribed, painfully slow, sent by messenger on horseback, taking days, sometimes weeks to reach their destination. The ink dries long before the words are read. These letters are formal, distant, polite, but empty. My lord requests the honor of your consideration. May the union between our houses be fruitful and blessed. Not a single note of affection, not a single spark of feeling. Just words, looping and cold. If you are fortunate, a miniature portrait may accompany it, a faded likeness touched up by the painter. But you cannot trust the colors. You cannot trust the smile. You are marrying a stranger. The negotiation begins. Dowry, territory, terms of alliance. You are a piece on the chessboard, moved not by desire, but by necessity. In the meantime, you wait. You sit in the solar, your hands busy with stitching or parchment, but your mind drifts. What will he look like? Will he speak kindly? Will he demand sons? Will he leave you in another distant castle, just like this one? For noblemen, the arrangements are not so different. You are given a name, a lineage, a face, told to wed her, to bind yourself to this person for strategy, for land, for appearance. Your heart is not asked to participate, and even if the day of marriage does come, even if the feasting hall is filled with music and meat and flickering torchlight, it does not last. The festivities are brief. The expectations remain. Afterward, the letters do not stop. There are always letters. Letters to family. Letters to rivals. Letters to the church. Pages and pages of slow, deliberate ink. You dip the quill again and again, writing the same greetings, the same farewells. In service and honor, by the grace of God. Formalities to fill the void between decisions and events. Every week brings new correspondence, missives from stewards, reports from tenants, news of harvests, taxes, complaints. You do not reply quickly. You cannot. There is no postal system. Only messengers and waiting. If you are lucky, there is poetry. Not good poetry, but at least something different. A troubadour's verse. A borrowed book. Stories copied by hand and passed from court to court. You read slowly, aloud, if only to break the silence. But silence returns. It always does. The afternoon stretches forward. The hourglass turns again. Somewhere beyond the trees, beyond the hills, another castle receives your letter. A noble there, just like you, reads it in the same still room, with the same distant gaze. The boredom is shared, quietly, in ink and in silence, and the waiting continues. Every so often, the rhythm of castle life is interrupted. A day arrives that is not quiet, but not truly joyful either. A feast day, a hunting excursion, a visiting dignitary. Something meant to stir excitement, meant to bring color to the gray walls. But even these occasions are performances, rehearsed, expected, and often exhausting. On a feast day, the great hall is swept more carefully. Tapestries are shaken out, candles lit in greater numbers. Spits are turned in the kitchen from before dawn, and the air fills with the smell of roasting meat, crushed herbs, and the sweat of the overworked servants. Chickens, boars, or a rare stag may be cooked for hours, not for nourishment, but for display. You, as noble, must dress with ceremony, your best tunic or gown. Jewelry worn not for beauty, but to declare your family's reach. You are seated according to status, spoken to according to lineage. Every word you say is weighed. Every silence is noticed. There is no real dancing, no real laughter, just murmured conversation, long pauses, and the occasional loud chuckle that feels more like performance than amusement. You sip from a goblet. You chew slowly. You listen, always listening. To flatter, to feign interest, to appear well-bred. Between courses, someone performs, a gesture with clumsy antics. A bard with a long, droning tale. You do not laugh unless others do. The jokes are old. The story is one you've heard a dozen times. Sometimes, guests are asked to contribute a poem. You might be one of them, reciting a verse you didn't write, smiling as your voice echoes against stone and silence. Later, after the feast, there may be music, flutes, lutes, or soft drums. The notes float gently through the hall, but rarely stir emotion. They are a signal. The night is nearly over. If the season is mild, perhaps a hunt is arranged the next day. You rise before the sun, not with eagerness, but with obligation. The horses are prepared, the falcons hooded and restless. Servants lead you into the woods, where you ride slowly in formation. A noble not truly skilled in the chase, but expected to appear brave. You do not track the animal. Others do that for you. You simply ride, eyes half-lidded, back aching, trying not to fall behind. If a falcon is released, you watch it disappear into the sky, a blur of feathers and instinct. You may not even see what it catches. Still, when you return, you are expected to tell of your success, to boast, to repeat the same tired tales around the fire that night. Even these diversions, the feasts, the hunts, the celebrations, are choreographed, staged, predictable. There is no spontaneity, only ritual. The servants clean up long after midnight. You, wrapped in layered fabric, retire to your chamber once more, not with joy, not with contentment, but with relief. The performance is over. You can remove the jewelry, unlace the gown, close the door. Back into stillness, back into solitude, back into the rhythm of waiting. The feast is done, and silence, once again, returns to the castle. Night in a medieval castle does not come gently. As the sun dips below the tree line, long shadows stretch across the stone floors. The sounds of the day, the clink of metal, the slow shuffle of servants, the distant barking of dogs, fade into a quiet that is vast and heavy. Your chamber awaits you, large but not warm, furnished but not comfortable. The fireplace smolders with fading embers. The stone walls are too thick for voices to carry through, and the torchlight outside your door flickers just enough to remind you, you are alone. The servants have withdrawn. The fire is banked. And now, the castle becomes a place of memory, of soft fears and echoing silence. You lie in bed. High wooden, four-posted. Curtains drawn tight, not for privacy, but to block the draft. The mattress is stuffed with straw. The linens are rough. You shift, carefully, trying not to feel the cold air on your neck. There is no moonlight, only a small oil lamp placed nearby. The shadows move as it flickers. Sometimes you watch those shadows for hours. Noble blood protects you from many things. but not from the dark, not from the weight of your thoughts. You think of illness, a cough that hasn't left your chest, or a fever that swept through the lower quarters last week. Disease does not respect lineage. You've seen it take both servant and lord, swiftly, quietly, with no explanation. You think of betrayal, not from enemies, but from those closest. A cousin who looks too long at your lands. A brother who writes letters in secret. A steward who may one day whisper to the wrong priest. You think of invasion. The road through the valley is quiet, but it has been traveled before. You remember the stories of sieges lasting months, of rats eaten for survival, of arrows raining down from distant hills. And then there is memory of a sibling lost in childhood, of a marriage that has grown colder than these walls, of children you barely know, sent away to be raised elsewhere, of all the days that have passed without change, without joy, without meaning. Time slows in the dark. Thoughts lengthen. Fears stretch out, thin but unbreakable. Sometimes the quiet is broken. A knock at the outer door. Footsteps in the corridor. A creaking floorboard that should not creak. You freeze, breath held, waiting. Listening. Always listening. But then, silence again. You sigh. The lamp gutters. A log shifts in the fireplace with a muted crack. You pull the curtain tighter, and eventually sleep comes. Not softly, not kindly, but out of sheer exhaustion. Your last thought is of morning, that it will come, that it always does, and when it does, the same bells will ring, the same gowns will be laced, the same faces will greet you, with the same expressions, saying the same things. It is a life of stone, of duty, and of waiting. A life surrounded by walls. And while the world outside may move, inside the castle, time stands still,